All right, we're going to continue our conversation on the internet and social media in public relations. This is part 2 of that discussion. And as you know, our discussions are based on the textbook Public Relations Strategies and Tactics by Wilcox and Cameron, the 10th edition. Making friends on social media and in public relations, a big part of what we do is making friends. PR and marketing personnel believe social networking is vital for these reasons. Gaining consumer insights. You learn a lot about how people think about your organization, your product, your service from what they say on social media. So it's been said that social media is much better than a focus group, which is sort of the old way of doing it. So gaining consumer insights. Building brand awareness, it's a very effective way, again, just as using traditional media, and maybe more so, of making people aware of the organization. Creating customer loyalty. If they have a good experience in your social media work, your social media offerings, then that has a way of creating loyalty. It's important to shape messages that are relevant, meaningful, useful, and interesting to the company's friends. And ways of doing that include humor, the use of video, the use of music, contests, audience participation. Try to get the conversation going. So sometimes it's, in fact, very often it's good to ask a question that people can respond to, not yes or no, but respond to by telling some bit of information about themselves. So YouTube in particular, of course, the king of video clips, the most popular purveyor of videos on the internet by far. YouTube is, in fact, the second most popular search engine after its parent company. Did you know that? Google. Google owns YouTube. And YouTube streams about 40% of all the online videos. You might think it might be more, but when you think about all of the videos online, and then 4 out of 10 of those are going through YouTube, that's very impressive. Many videos are posted by individuals, of course, but organizations also create online videos to good effect. Here is your textbook mentions H&R Block. Here's a recent H&R Block commercial, which is also on their YouTube page.
At H&R Block, you could get a refund advance up to $3,500 within minutes of filing.
We could get money in minutes?
Yeah.
Money in minutes.
Money in minutes.
Money in minutes.
Money in minutes. Money in minutes. In minutes? What? In minutes?
In minutes, say what? 3,500!
They are freaking out.
Wait until they hear it's interest-free.
You could get a refund advance up to $3,500 in minutes. Interest-free. It's better with Block.
All right, so H&R Block deals with taxes and so on, and not usually thought of as a fun subject, but they found a way to make it fun with that commercial and with that video. And as I say, they have a YouTube page. So while that commercial might appear on regular television, broadcast or cable television, they're also putting
at H&R Block
videos like that. And there's that particular video again. They are putting not just commercials, but other types of videos as well on their YouTube page. And you see some are quite short in the nature of commercials, but others, here's one 2 minutes and 45 seconds, 124, 229. So some of these are longer videos. And again, a company, H&R Block, that probably benefits from doing some things that are fun and entertaining and humorous. So there's a good example of how videos can be used in public relations. Twitter, the blue bird of happiness, tips for using Twitter, and Twitter certainly, as with Facebook, can be misused. Think outside the box. Now that's easy to say and harder to do, but you're looking to bring awareness to the brand. You are trying to do some things that are unusual, that other people aren't doing. Don't just imitate the things that you see doing, although you certainly may get some good ideas from other organizations. But the thing that everybody's doing, maybe you should be thinking about coming up with something that is unique. Avoid the bulletin board syndrome, and this is one way probably of thinking outside the box, to not just use Twitter or any other social media just for making announcements about particular events and so on. So what again you're looking for is to engage in a conversation with your audience. So if you can post comments in the form of a question that causes them to give a full response, something that then encourages other people to share their thoughts, then that's a great way to go. Don't be a twammer. I'd never seen that term before, but it's a good one. So limit the number of tweets. Basically, twammer is based on the idea of spam and someone being a spammer, putting out too many messages, constantly putting out messages to the point that people ignore them. Be committed to updating at least once per day. I think this is very, very important. I don't think that's really realistic with YouTube, probably, but with other social media, I think that is important, and to update frequently and once a day is certainly a reasonable thing. Use Twitter in a crisis, and you can provide up-to-the-minute details, and you can do this also, of course, with Facebook and other social media. So in a crisis situation, it's a very valuable thing for getting information out quickly and to a very specific audience. Here's a video on using Twitter within public relations.
Hello entrepreneurs, and welcome to Ask IC. So today's tip is social media focused, and it's about Twitter. Now everybody's online these days. Twitter, Facebook, conventional media, and PR still works, but most people are online. So how do you use Twitter to maximize your PR efforts? First, you want to make sure that you share things that are industry related that people can be excited about. Second, you want to make sure that you try to once in a while incorporate people in your industry that are already known and tag them on that post. Their followers are paying attention, so you're very likely to get some of their followers to follow you. Third of all, you want to make sure that you leave room for people to retweet so that they can post their comments and feel like they're a part of what you're tweeting. So make sure it's long enough to have room for them to share their thoughts. If you maximize all your 140 characters, there's no room for people to say something. And three, you want to make sure that you give credit to whoever or wherever you get the information from. And again, if that person or that company is on Twitter, you tag them on it. And also, did you know that the best time to post on Twitter is Friday between 12 and 2 o'clock?
So we will pause that video there, and that's most of the useful content in that video. So some advice for using Twitter in the public relations realm. Texting, a way of life, and certainly has become a way of life for most people, hasn't it? Organizations use texting to reach employees, customers, and key publics, and I think it has become more common to text to a wider audience than what we might have done a few years ago. It's becoming more common to get a text from an organization that you patronize. There are two main levels of organizational texting: broadcast, which is sent to all employees, and certainly texting is a great internal form of communications within an organization, and that is an area that we've talked about before. I'm sure we will talk about again. Internal public relations, providing information and building relationships with people within the organization. And then another level is subscription, where users sign up to receive messages. Texting may also be used for fundraising, and in the textbook there's a great example of how that was done. The Red Cross did it during the Haitian earthquake a number of years ago. Think before you talk, tweet, or text. This really doesn't apply specifically to public relations. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I think it's relevant, and I think it's relevant in a business circumstance. If you're in a business situation, I think it's relevant. Let us say your first job outside of college. Keep it real. A person always takes precedent over a device and deserves your full attention. So someone comes in to talk to you, then put down the cell phone. Be aware of your surroundings. Don't have cell phone conversations in places where people can't easily leave. For example, elevators, airplanes, bathroom stalls. Right? You don't want to. And here we're not so much thinking of texting as an actual conversation. Do the crossword puzzle test. Any place you wouldn't do a crossword puzzle is a place where you shouldn't catch up on emails and texts and so forth. So meetings, networking events. Again, you want to be paying attention to people who are in your presence, right? So, and not be seen to be disinterested in them. Eliminate confusion, or leaders should be clear on the rules. Here is really what this is about. There should be guidelines about using wireless devices. These should be announced in advance or at the beginning of a meeting, or should be widely known and discussed from time to time. Leaders may schedule breaks for people to check their messages, because it is important for people to know what messages they're receiving if people are trying to contact them, and obviously an emergency. So that's a good idea to schedule breaks to check messages. Wikis, and the headline in the textbook is Saving Trees, so a wiki can make it unnecessary. It can be a substitute for or an alternative to publishing something in a traditional way. Wikis are web pages that enable anyone to provide input and to modify their content, and I think almost all of you are familiar with Wikipedia and how that works, and that's an example. General Motors created a wiki site for its centennial celebration as an alternative to a coffee table book, which was going to be a major publication, expensive thing to produce. The GM folks thought that a wiki site was more social and more inclusive, and it would allow the story to be told by the users of GM vehicles, as well as company management. So the people who drive Chevrolets or GM trucks could share their stories about their memories of and their feelings about cars from Chevrolet and GM and their other companies. So that was an interesting idea. Wikis are used to keep employees and clients up to date on schedules and plans. It can be a customized web space. So again, this is very helpful for internal communications. Podcast, radio on steroids. The word podcast comes from, it's a combination of iPod and broadcasting. So podcast. Most podcasts are audio only, but some contain video, although I don't know what the difference then is in that. And a YouTube video, I guess perhaps it's a video that you might put on your own space, so that perhaps would explain the difference. A podcast should not be an infomercial or a recitation of an executive's speech. Podcast should be informal and conversational. It should be entertaining. So here are some tips for podcasts. Generally, they should be less than 15 minutes. I know there are some longer podcasts out there. Most of them are shorter, so less than 15 minutes. Use several different stories or segments. So if you're going, especially if you're going longer than 15 minutes, then you may want to and probably should break your podcast into segments. Take a break, do a transition of some kind, and go from one story to the other. Don't use a script. Certain things you may want to script, just very briefly though, but you generally do not want to be reading a script throughout the podcast. It's not going to sound natural. It's not going to sound conversational and informal, as we've discussed. Create an RSS feed, which allows users and applications to access updates to websites in a standardized format. So make it easy for people to access your podcast and to be able to come back to it again and again. produce new podcasts on a weekly basis. And again, we have talked about this, to be consistent, to be regular with the social media posts that you create, whether it be on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It's harder on YouTube, but podcasts should be at least on a weekly basis. Look at a couple of things here. Here is a list of the top U.S. podcasts. You might want to go and listen to some of these. I don't have links on this particular page, but The Daily, which is produced by the New York Times, is the number one podcast in the U.S. Quite a few of these come from National Public Radio. So a lot of these are produced by traditional media organizations, but they're taking advantage of the new technology there. And then here's another list, and there are some links on this page. I'm not going to go to any of those, but again, this is someone else's list. And again, you see The Daily from the New York Times at the top there. And this would give you the opportunity to go through it again and listen to some of these professionally produced and very successful podcasts. So have a look at those two links. The next generation, mobile phones have, of course, for all intents and purposes, become portable computers. Almost 3/4, around 72% of internet users will access the web only via their smartphones by the year 2025. Not that far off, just a short time in the future. This is from the World Advertising Research Center. So we are seeing that the smartphones have become the primary way that people are receiving their information online. Already, PR professionals are using phone apps to reach audiences. Quicken, the financial software firm, introduced a budgeting app for the iPhone. I know there are others, and some of you may use them, but that's a great way of promoting Quicken by providing a useful app in that way. Of course, it's nearly impossible to predict the future of digital technology for public relations. A lot of the things that we are familiar with today, 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago, we had no thought of it. So we shall see, but we know that it's going to continue to develop, and it's going to become ever more an important part of communications, and therefore an important part of public relations. All right, that concludes our conversation then on the internet and social media. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.